Hi, this is Dr. Scott Young, and today we're going to do the fourth of the series. It's called the Tribulation Groups. This one is the Called. Coming right up. Okay, so one thing that you can go on to drscottyoung.com, you can download the poster. There are two different posters. One's more on the Tribulation series, and the difference with the Tribulation series one is it goes over the 21 different judgments. The Hope in the Last Days looks different. It's a little bit lighter of a color. That one does some of the judgments, but adds other details that you might not know. So it's very helpful. I think if you wanted to get both of them, they're for free. You just got to put your name and email in, and you can donate. That would be very helpful to me, but you do not have to. I never demand that at all. To give you a couple ideas, if you want to research a little bit more upon these groups, first one at drscottyoung.com, you can under the bookstore, you can look for Rapture. Could there be more than one? That overviews much of this information that might be helpful. Second book that you can get is called How He Lived an Undead Life. This is the only book title that I ever liked because of something that I made, because most of the time I suck at titles. Okay, I can write books and everything else, but I cannot do a title to save my life. But this one actually did come up with. So this one is a fictional book, and it takes place mostly in the second half of the tribulation. And we go over the called quite a bit in this one. Now, a third one is called Our Secret Zombie Life. This isn't necessarily end time related. It is some ability with that. But to give you a slight background on the story, I think it was 2016 or something like that. The movie World War Z, and I could be wrong. You guys might have a better date than I'm thinking of off the top of my head. God tells me to go see it, and I'm watching. I argue with God for a while because I hate zombie movies, but I go and see it, and long story short, basically, it led me to understandings that I never really could get. And two of my most favorite groups to talk about are the Called and the Goats. We will deal with that one a little bit later on. It's because there's some really interesting revelations in uh, in all the Gospels about the Who people. I didn't say revelation like the Book of Revelation. I mean revelations, or an unveiling kind of thing. Okay, so let's look at what we've got here for you today. Okay. This is the Called. And some of you are going to go, I've never heard this one before. I get it. Okay. Stick with me for just a little bit and you'll understand where I'm going with this. Okay. Okay. So on this one here, instead of the other timelines that you've seen before, what we're going to focus more on this part is the middle of the tribulation all the way to the very end. Yom Kippur is the great day of the wrath of the Lamb. Rosh Hashanah is when Jesus shows up in the clouds. So to do a little more focus on this particular area, the second seal happens really late in that first half of the time frame. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but the second seal is that World War III. And so there's massive war that goes on. By the time you move through the third seal, which is a massive level of hyperinflation. You think we're going through hyperinflation in 2024? Nothing like that time frame. Everyone will get affected 5 or 6 times worse than anything you can ever imagine. What it will lead to is a little bit later. The fourth seal is called the Pale Horse. Okay, these are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And this is a death of a quarter of the people of the world. And when you realize how dramatic that is. It's startling. Now, the fifth seal is called the Martyrs. It doesn't really have anything to do with the other ones, but it will have something to do with the group we're going to talk about today. The first trumpet shows up nearly at the same time. The third seal's kind of showing. These things are sitting on top of one another. The seals go all the way through. The trumpets are in the second half, and the last 30-ish whatever days are going to be around the bowls. Okay, but the first trumpet comes in, and you have hail and fire burning up a third of the planet. I mean, like, think about that. That would actually relate to hyperinflation because so much of the growing season is just wiped out. The second trumpet is a volcanic ash that will create a tsunami. So you've got a comet that goes into it, creates ash. It'll cover the planet, which leads you to the concept of another meteor will hit down and make a third of the waters bitter. You see, even in the fourth seal, it talks about plagues. Well, guess what? If you got this stuff going on, you're going to lead to famine and plagues and all this stuff. That's why they're so related. And when you see it that way, you don't see them as individual judgment only points. They are collective. And that actually fits so perfectly with what would happen in the world. It becomes a cumulative effect. That I tend to say the second half of this time frame is a hell on earth. Those who believe that the church or the bride of Christ must go through the tribulation so that she can be perfected. This is a very common theme by people who believe in only a one rapture near the end. What they say is that we must be perfected. And I go, wait a second. That says that Jesus didn't do enough on the cross, that you need to do something to accomplish your faith. And the answer is that is anti-scriptural. So I know some of you believe that, but the reality is that doesn't fit with what Jesus did for you. And if you don't understand what Jesus did for you, you need to read the book of Romans. It tells you what he did. And it is so complete that it's startling. This second half of the tribulation is so bad. The first half is going to be horrible. It'll be worse than World War II, World War I happening at the exact same time with chaos and craziness happening. And then you have the second half of the tribulation that is a literal hell on earth. Everything is destroying itself around you if you are living in this time frame. You're not going to make it. People think, oh, I'll be able to make it. I'm going to explain that one. It's going to be fun. Okay, the 7 bowls will show up at the near end of the time frame, and they get so much worse. It's not even funny. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the conditions in those last 3.5 years. The mark of the beast. Now, remember, if you've listened to my stuff, excuse me, the mark of the beast is discussed in Revelation 13:16, Revelation 13:18. If anyone has wisdom, let him calculate the number of the beast. It's the number of man. His number is 666. You don't get the mark until you get the beast. The beast is not a system. The beast is the Antichrist. And the Antichrist has to show up as a man in the beginning of the tribulation. So he would be on the scene for several years, obviously 3.5 years-ish, okay? And he will then require all transactions to be accomplished by having the mark of the beast. But see, you just can't go get the snap on kind of thing, snap off kind of response. What you would do is that you have to get this seal, and you can't get it accidentally. This is a very big faux pas of most people who don't get it. You have to actively worship along with the utilization of the mark of the beast. You have to align yourself with Satan. And it's so powerful when you understand you're aligning yourself with Satan. And it is a conscious choice because you have to worship. So anyone who has the mark of the beast, they just didn't get it like, oh, willy-nilly, yeah, maybe I'll just go get it anyway. They will have had to make a significant choice. That's the reason for the tribulation. I mean, Jesus could just, let me do it right-handed, snap his fingers and kick this thing off into the millennial reign if he wanted to. But he didn't because he's trying to wake people up. Well, that sounds like what we're talking about today in the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening is not the tribulation. The Great Awakening is so that we can have maybe 500 million to 1 billion souls come in to the understanding that they're the bride of Christ. Now, every time it talks to a group of people, it's warning you. And you can read these verses and not just say, well, that's something for someplace, sometime off. Are you going down that path? Okay? That's kind of what it's trying to give you, that concept. There will be a continual grieving as occurs in war. Let me tell you, there are stories, and one of the best ones is done by Band of Brothers, Stephen Ambrose. Stephen Ambrose looked at the 82nd Airborne, and he followed them through, all the way through. So it's a really powerful story through D-Day, pre-D-Day, into D-Day, all the way into, Hitler's lair at Berchtesgaden. And so this happens all the way through World War II. Now, one of the statements that has been said by in the book, but I personally, who have interviewed literally thousands of the Greatest Generation who were in the middle of the war, is that they would be fighting along and there was no ability. I'm going to bring this off the screen for just a sec. There was no ability for you to grieve. I mean, you're in the middle of the Battle of the Bulge. Everything's raging around you. Your best friend might have just died seconds ago. You can die with him by stopping, or you can keep fighting, and you got to get out of that foxhole and move forward. And many times those men struggled with their grief for a very long time frame because they had no chance to grieve their friends, and many of their friends. Now, when you have to survive, we'll come back into here, when you have to survive just to make it, you're going to notice that, at the bride of Christ, when she is raptured before the tribulation, that could be as many as 700, 800 million people. Now, how do I say that? Barna surveys basically indicate as many as 10%, 9-10% of the people of the world might be believers in Christ. Now, you can disagree with me, and that's fine, but I'm coming up with just a basic number, okay? I pray that we have at least that, by the time Jesus shows up, several years down the road. And yet, that's the first level of that. Maybe every person on the planet will know someone, or maybe many someones who have left. Then you would have the deaths that would occur in the tribulation for various reasons, okay? You don't have 700 million people leave the planet and not affect people with murders and pillaging and accidents everywhere. It would totally disrupt everything. Then you get into the second seal, the third seal, the fourth seal, the first trumpet, the second trumpet, the third trumpet, and you got millions and millions of people dying. Everyone's going to feel it. And so they will have this continual grieving that will occur. Now, sorry, let's jump into this again. There will be chaotic crime, just like happens in many of those post-apocalyptic movies, okay? When you think of, I researched a series, and when I was writing the book, I told you about Our Secret Zombie Life, I had to research all these different series, read the books, do the stuff. This is what you do when you research something, right? and I'm researching the series Walking Dead. And when you watch many, just it's just one of them, right? There become chaotic crimes, right? There's the insurance salesman or the policeman who becomes, a leader or whatever, or a villain. Um, and even Waterworld has that with Kevin Costner. It's an insurance salesman that actually is leading the rebel forces, right? So people change their whole personality in that way, and so the people will see in that time frame massively chaotic crimes that don't make any sense without remorse with these people, because human life they see around them is so worthless in that way. That is how difficult it would be to spend even a week in that time frame, let alone 3.5 years. Again, when you have a chaotic crime and continual grieving, you'll have anarchy in some areas. Now, anarchy might be actually a good thing if they're against the mark of the beast and didn't get it, but there will be anarchy in some areas because the police won't even be able to handle this. They will be so decimated, not just all of but the services of your electricity, your gas, and your water and everything. None of that stuff will have any meaning. You're not staying in the same home. That's not happening, bud. Um, this will change everything. And wherever you go, you will have to, jump into communities. But those communities will be dangerous, just like in the post-apocalyptic movies. But it'll be much, much more chaotic because there are random activities that go on around you. With the first, second, third trumpets, all these different judgments that are happening, and they're messing with the world every single time. You see, most of the stuff in our zombie movies talk about a one event, right? A one event of everyone being, turning into zombies. Well, that just doesn't fix everything. When we have what will happen in the second half of the tribulation, I mean, it just gets worse and worse. I mean, you just find more and more things to be freaking out about. And Matthew 24, some people propose who are more post-trib viewpoint in their rapture viewpoint. They will say that pre-trib people talk about Matthew 24, and that's not actually true at all. Actually, we can find instruction no matter what your belief system is upon those pre-trib rapture. But I'm going to show you how this will actually work in a second. It's going to be really kind of cool. But it explains the pregnancy cycle. And as me as the husband watching my wife go through this, and you as women who have been through it, and men who've watched your wives go through this situation, and friends and family and everyone else, you notice at the first half of the first trimester, there's not as much changes. There's some physical changes. Many people get sick, a morning sickness, right? And then the second trimester, it accelerates even more. Now, sometimes you lose that morning sickness, but you just gained a whole bunch more things that kind of mess with your body. And by the third trimester, especially if it's a difficult pregnancy, you have so much difficulty even trying to sit down, get up, lay down, get up from a prone position. And that's what Matthew 24 is indicating, is that it becomes a multiplicity effect. It becomes a funnel outward to how many more things are going on. And that's what kind of picture that you have to see. Now, in this time frame, I just want to list them out, and again, we just sort of mentioned them. But let me just share with you what happens. I just want you to close your eyes. Just listen to me for a second, okay? Close your eyes. I took a drink. Close your eyes, and I want you to think about this. There are bloody seas in many parts of the world, maybe as much as a third of the world. The rivers, a third of the rivers are turning to blood. There is a killing level of heat. Much later on, there will be darkness with pain in Babylon. The crops will have been burned a third, and then later on fully burned. Demons are on the loose. Now you can open your eyes. Do you see how much that would affect you? It's massive. And it would change your whole responsiveness to the situations of the world. Okay. I use this conversation of called, and there are converts that are not seen most times when we look at Scripture. But let's look at Luke 12:47. It's one of the more powerful ones, but there's a ton of other ones, okay? Let's read it together. So we're going to kind of hit it. And I'm going to bring it up on the not on the screen, but I'm going to bring it up here, okay? And you can go pull up Luke 12:47. Okay. So here's what it says. That slave who knew his master's will and didn't prepare himself or do it will be severely beaten. Now, you cannot read that verse and do it fast. I'm going to say it again, and then we're going to pick it apart, okay? That slave or doulos, servant, anything else, who knew his master's will and didn't prepare himself or do it will be severely beaten. Now, this is actually through Luke 12, one of my favorite chapters out there. It is running through when Jesus comes back and he sees, and he's talking about a viewpoint of the time frame that Jesus shows up, which starts with the pre-tribulation rapture. But it is a picture viewpoint. It's not just saying, you don't want to take this as a one moment in time. What it is talking about the whole end as a picture, okay? So that's why we're talking from it as a simile, okay? The slave, which would be someone who is attached to Jesus, which means that is a believer in Christ. But that's not you in the church. And that's why most pastors miss this point. They try to bring it over and help you to understand it, and that's not who you are, okay? It says that they knew the master's will. Who's the master? Jesus, right? What's his will? Well, he's talking about the will right here in Luke 12. He's talking about the will of him coming back, a second coming in essence, okay? This is what the master's will is is to have an apocalyptic issue or a tribulational time frame. Okay, now apocalypse is actually at the very end of the tribulation. Okay, but an apocalyptic, which is an overall viewpoint of end times. So this person actually knew or knows the master's will. They didn't prepare themselves. The word prepare is hedimeoso, and that is to make one ready to prepare for. Now, sometimes you would take that word and you would say, well, that would be like if the bride is making herself ready. Yes, it can also mean that. But what this really is talking about, making the necessary preparations. Now, when you put it in the sentence here, it actually goes and says it didn't prepare. So as an opposite viewpoint, as the bride of Christ, who is making herself ready she's not doing anything. She just puts on the clothes that Jesus created. I mean, Jesus, by his blood, takes you and makes you clean, white as snow, right? That's why the wedding gown is a traditional white gown, okay? But these people, these servants, some say slave, but doulos is the Greek word, didn't do it. Now, what does that mean a little bit closer? Now, I've spent a huge amount of time over the years with people who are preppers and many people who are inside of the Great Awakening, understanding the SARA and the EBS and all this other stuff, which are many of you watching right now. Prep. Okay, cool. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying you should. I'm just admitting a point here. Okay, it's actually where we would get the word of prepper. Now, if you think about this for a second, preppers have only existed as a group. It's real interesting since about the 60s. Now you go, why the 60s? Because of that time frame, people started to have they would have underground areas. Now, obviously, this happened in the Battle of London and the bombing of London, where they went underground, in the tunnels to like cover themselves from the bombing of Germany, but from the German airplanes. But what we're really talking about is this became a personal decision when Khrushchev brought over those the missiles to be able to launch very quickly into Florida and many of the other southern states. So this is where we get this concept. And so preppers are really a powerful, interesting group. Now, when you think of a prepper, they will talk about, and I'm going to pull this off the screen for a second. A prepper is someone who's trying to prepare him or herself to have food and water. The normal time frame of the prepper is 2 to 3 years. Okay, and they might have a shorter time frame, depends on what they think of. What they're trying to do is have enough food, water, toiletries, sanitation issues, growing their own food. Guns, ammo, whatever, to be able to get themselves through. And there are even prepper reality shows that some guy will have, this prepper area, and he brings in an expert, and he might bring in several experts, and they go, well, you're good over here, but you're not good over here. Oh, I got to fix that. Yeah, you got to fix that, because he's talking about like nuclear events or dirty bombs or whatever, right? And so this becomes a huge issue for people. Now, I want you to go, and we're going to do this just a hair here. We're going to go backward a step. Now, I just said to you, you have bloody seas, rivers of blood, killing heat, darkness and pain, crops burned, demons on the loose. Okay, just stick with me for a sec. So now it says a prepper and those prepping activities. During the second half of the tribulation, let's say you have done everything and you have a perfect river that runs through your property, or even a creek, okay? You go, man, this is the perfect area. But what if the Lord, in his wisdom, allows, and this is an allowance, okay? He's not creating the evil, but he allows the demons loose, and they poison that particular creek because it's poisoned way up the area. Or what if your crops were the parts that were burned? I don't care what you do. If your crops are burned, you probably might have had your property burned at the same time, right? That makes sense. What if your sanitation was messed up because of a comet? There's so many things that you cannot prepare for. And here's what the word says to us. It says, and didn't do it. Now, they knew the master's will, didn't prepare themselves, and didn't do it. That means at the time when Jesus first came, they were not believers. And you're going to say, now I know people, when you think about preppers, they're really cool people. I've interacted with a lot of them, okay? They're cool. You might not like them, you might not agree with them, but I like who they are for the most part. But they know about it. That many of them know about end time issues, but they know about it from an apocalyptic standpoint. Okay, they don't. Maybe they know end time issues, but they feel like that they can survive, and they distrust the government. All this other stuff that kind of comes in, right? But some of them will find out, and I'm not saying you are this, okay? And you might go, well, I'm a prepper and I'm a believer. I understand. It's okay. But what I'm talking about is a group who will be hardened, have a hardened heart away from Christ at that moment. Not because they hate Jesus, but because they believed that they were sufficient in here. What it then says is that will be severely beaten. This means severe persecution. This is farther than, and people go, well, people live through severe persecution. It means the word polyscourged. Scourged, I mean, Jesus was scourged more than the recommended amount, right? If you know anything about this, there was a recommended amount that was listed, and he was beaten many more times than that, which means that in the legal realm, Jesus died legally and he died physically, which is such a powerful teaching that I do later on. But we when we say polyscourged, what that really means is massive level of persecution. And when you go deeper into that word, it means martyrdom. These are people who are martyred. When you have a scourging like this and this persecution, so somewhere in this time frame, in this situation, these are people who are become believers. It's a real fascinating sentence. The sentence structure is so deep and so powerful that you can live in that verse for months. And frankly, I have. Okay, Dr. Jeff and I have, beat that verse up over and over again. And God loves that because we're spending time in the Word. So these people are believers later on. They knew the Master's will. They didn't prepare themselves, prepper. They didn't do it, which means originally they didn't do it to get themselves into a pre-tribulation rapture or even the chosen's rapture, which we will talk about that one. And yet what happens is that because of the time frame, not because they were bad. See, people think you do things bad and you get a holy whipping, and that's not what I'm talking about here. Many times people have gotten a beating or killing, and they never deserved it. That is the exact word here. It's martyrdom. When it says severely beaten, this is what it's talking about. This is the whole point of this. It is not like something you kind of come back from and go, well, I just get part of the way through. In Romans 8:28, it says, called according to his purpose. That means kaleo, Kaleo, called according to his purpose. What? Now, I know that you can get something out of that verse. I love the verse, okay? But what if that verse is talking about a group and their purpose is to be the fifth seal? They are supposed to be the martyrs. I'm going to show you more about that. Jesus comes back with his called kaleo, chosen ekletos, or kletos, one way of saying it, and faithful pistis. Three separate groups of people. Again, called, the kaleo, means to be called out or bidden out. What that, in essence, it's a multi-layered meaning. The kaleo means to be called out according to purpose, which is Romans. It goes along perfectly with the Greek meaning. But it also has a sense that we're going to show you in a minute, that they're going to be taken out of the planet. Now, there's two ways they're going to be taken. Lots of them are going to die as a martyr for Christ, and others are going to be in the last rapture. It's going to be good. You'll see it. Okay. But these people are prepping for an end, but they're not going to be able to do it. Okay? So I think we kind of hit that group a little bit more, but let's go deeper. The basics of the fourth and fifth trumpet. Now, I love just doing this, and this is how deep and wide this is. Revelation 8:12 through 13. A third of the sun, the moon, the stars are darkened. Like, Guys, get it. Do you understand? If you have ash going on in the planet, and this is the fourth trumpet, because of this, and just you're going to lose day sunlight. You're going to lose the moons, and you're going to lose the stars. What that is a covering, a covering over the planet. Well, that would just be some of the atmospheric conditions. This would be the perfect climate change conversation, right? Um, this would be left over from the Wormwood Comet, from the third trumpet, that the fourth trumpet is just the effect of that. In the fifth trumpet, we have Revelation 9, 1 through 12. And it's called the first woe. So this is the beginning of the woes. There are three woes that happen in this. There's a fallen star into the abyss. It opens up the abyss, and out of that abyss comes a billowing smoke. These locusts that cannot be killed, you cannot beat them down, will come out. They will not harm anyone but the ones who are sealed of God on their forehead. Now, this is not just that seal, the authorization that happens for the 144,000. See, they're already in heaven, because they're in heaven in Revelation 7, verse 9, if you watched my last one with Dr. Jeff, okay? They're already in heaven with the chosen. They are guests at the wedding, and I'll explain that one a little bit more. But these new people are sealed of God. So this fifth trumpet, it does not affect them. There will be a torture for 5 months with stings of a scorpion for the people who are not sealed of God on their forehead. It says that people will seek death and not find it, longing to die, but death will flee from them. Wait a second. If you want to die, I think that you could. And you know you could. If many of you have had those concepts, thoughts, which are really demonic thoughts of killing yourself in the suicide realm, if you have those thoughts, you're going to accomplish them. Now, if you don't do it, it's because you really didn't want to most of the time. But see, sometimes when people do it over and over, they finally get to the place where they just jump over the edge. But remember, these people here are trying to find death because it is so much of a torturous pain here. There is a possibility that those things come from the abyss, are the Nephilim, another group of really ugly fallen angels, that they might be at a small size, the size of these little small scorpion horses. I really think that's possible. They, at the end of this, it says, and they will scream out Abaddon or Apollyon. Now, if you've listened to the Tribulation series, when we talked about the fourth and fifth trumpet, Apollyon and Abaddon both mean Greek Hebrew, okay? First Hebrew and then Greek in that, means chief. When you understand, and I detail that a lot more here on our Secret Zombie Life, okay? In that point there that you see, the Haitians who had these chiefs would make people fall asleep for a short time frame with tetracycline. And if they got the right mixture, that person would be in a catatonic state. And then that chief would get them out of their grave, in essence, and it was underground, so it was a mausoleum type. You get them out of the grave and say, "You work for me, I got your soul." And they didn't know better. This was in the 1800s and earlier. This is when Robert Southey, who wrote the three little bears. Okay, the porridge is too hot, cold, right, just right. That's the same guy, and he writes about this. And those chiefs were actually called zombies, Z-O-M-B-I. So cool. The Bible validates itself in every way. If you want a validation, some of you guys think the Bible has been corrupted. It has 770 books. I go, you know what? Revelation 9, 1 through 12 proves zombies before the zombie concept was ever there. The first zombie movie of any concept was written in the 1930s with the white zombie. Only in the 60s did they kind of, accelerate that into, the zombie concepts that go further. And yet, the word intimates it in such an amazing way, because if these people can't die, they're going to kill themselves over and over again, but they're not going to be able to die. So they're going to walk around looking like zombies. Exactly what they've been talking about. When you call upon yourself, well, I'm never going to get married. I'm always cursed. I'm never blessed. I only think about, I love zombie movies and I love thinking about it. God is going to, if you say that over and over again, or you're prepping for an end and you think that you have to go through, you know what? You're making a pronouncement against yourself, in essence. Okay? And hey, listen, you want to prep, that's fine. Okay? If you believe that's from God, go for it. Okay? But the reality is, we need to be sufficient in Him and realize that He's there for us. Okay, let's do some verses here. Matthew 22, 3 and 8. It says, the servants were summoned. These would be the angels. The servants were summoned to summon those invited to the banquet, but they didn't want to come. The banquet was ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. That's the same kind of conversation as Luke 12:47. See, they get an invitation to the wedding feast. They could have been the bride, or at least they could have been the chosen who are guests in the wedding. Matthew 22:13 says, many are kaleo, but few are ekletos. Many are called, but few are chosen. Guys, that's saying many are invited, but few are guests. Guests at what? Matthew 22 is the wedding feast. The wedding ceremony's already happened from Greek standpoint. The wedding feast is afterward. Even in American tradition, we have a wedding and then you always do this, the reception, which is that feast part. I mean, some level of feast, right? You do it after. You don't do the feast before the wedding ceremony. So this is not about the bride. This is not about the groom. This is about a group of people who got an invitation, but they didn't want to come. And it's because they chose this situation. But they will actually fulfill such a powerful role in the eternal scheme of this. 1 Corinthians 1:8. He will strengthen you to the end, so that you will be blameless. Angelikalitos, which is a negative participle, of kalitos, which basically says it's opposite of the chosen. So it means that they were called. They're not chosen. See, remember, invited and guests they're so much alike in some ways, okay? But they are the chosen, got an invitation to the wedding and decided to believe in Christ so that they could be guests at the wedding, which is about in the middle of the time frame. This is what we talked about with Dr. Jeff. But the kaleo, the called, didn't want to come because they got the invitation years ago because they knew the master's will. They knew about it, but they put it off. And then when they could have come to the wedding, they missed it. How cool is that? 2 Timothy 1:9. He saved us and called us, kaleoed us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his purpose and grace. Oh my gosh, guys, let's catch that one. He saved us. Jesus saves us. And kaleo pulls us out for a holy calling. Now, I know you can get something out of that verse, but the depth of Scripture is this. What if those people, and I'm not just saying what if, I know this is the case. These people were set for a holy calling as the martyrs of Christ. They will have the martyr's crown you and I do not have. We are going to be in heaven and tears streaming down our face, watching these people not just die for Christ, but witness to the world. And if you don't get chills right now, you're missing it. And it's these preppers that come to a ugly situation. And it's not because they were bad, eternally bad. We're not talking about unbelievers. They will be believers for a time frame. They were called for a purpose to die for Christ. Oh, man. I mean, that should just mess you up, dudes. 2 John 1, 8. Watch yourselves so that you don't lose what we've worked for, but that you may receive the full reward. Hey, man, that's a warning. Some people believe that, they have this concept of once saved, always saved. And other people say, well, you can lose your salvation. As if both of those sides, let me just pull this off the screen for a sec. Once saved, always saved. You could lose your salvation actually intimates that something can get in the way of your salvation. And yet, the word says that nothing can get in the way of that. Did you hear that? Nothing can be between you and Christ. But what could be? Your choice. You could choose not to. I'm going to show you a group when we get to the goats that will mess you up again even farther. They will scare you when you realize that group. The called are just like this. This is an admonition to people not to lose your salvation because of your choices. So it says, again, read this again. Watch yourselves so that you don't lose what we have worked for. Worked for what? To be the bride. But that you may receive your full reward. What would the full reward be? It means a complete reward. Revelation 1:3 says if you study, pay attention to, and put it deep in your heart, you have a special blessing. That's a reward conversation. What would that be? To be the bride of Christ. That's the reward and the rapture of the bride. Oops, sorry. Click in the wrong area. This is the called salvation. So I want you to understand this part. Revelation 14:6. Then I saw another angel flying high overhead, having the eternal gospel to announce to the inhabitants of the worlds of the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. That is not to the Jews. The 144,000 are already gone. They're gone with the chosen. So there are two, or there are actually three. There is a angel of God, and it's just one guy. One angel bounces around the whole earth. And then the two witnesses. They're the only three proclaimers of the gospel. Dr. Jeff believes that the two witnesses have to announce each one of the trumpets. That's very possible. I'm not saying I disagree. I just, it's possible. Okay. But who announces an eternal gospel to all that inhabits the world? It's intimating a salvation point. The angel isn't doing it just for the heck of it. Okay. And no one believing. People will believe in that time frame. And this is the called. Now, let's go over a three-rapture conversation. Because when you understand it, you'll get it. Now, this is part I disagree a little bit. I go with barley, wheat, and grape. And I'm going to explain how they work. Okay? So the first harvest is called the barley harvest, I believe. Now, Dr. Jeff has a different viewpoint on it. He believes it's the wheat, then the barley, and the grape. And by the way, guys, it's okay. Okay, let me tell you how I'm going to go about this one and the research that I've done. Okay? Barley harvest. How do you deal with the grains, the good part of the barley inside of that, right? There's seeds and all kinds of other stuff. What you do this, and you let the chaff and the other, stuff that you're going to wash away or move away, go, and it'll float away, and the barley will pile up. Now, in the book of Ruth, she talks about a barley harvest, and it's over and over and over again. The book of Ruth is a picture of the bride. She is looking for a groom to save her, and the whole picture of the book of Ruth is barley, 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 barley. When you connect Ruth as the bride, a forerunner of you as the bride of Christ, the separation of the bride versus the chaff is these are the faithful. The bride are faithful. Not because she did something wonderful that Jesus said, oh, it's better than the other ones, okay? But we believed. Hebrews 11 talks about that Moses did these things, but he believed, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Belief credits you to righteousness. Go read Hebrews 11. It's the hall of faith. And it just says over and over, he believed and was credited to him as righteousness. So the belief gets you to the righteousness. Book of Ruth is all about that, right? So you go up in that pre-tribulation rapture point because of just a quick separation. The second one that's in the middle time frame that Dr. Jeff and I were talking about several days ago is what I like to use as the wheat harvest. Now, what they would do in ancient time frames is take the wheat. You can't just do this to the wheat. You have to put it against a little manipulator. It's a thing that you would kind of rub up against it. It is actually the word tribulum. Tribulum. You have to rub more harshly to get off the wheat from the chaff. You do it through tribulation. So these people and the chosen, and even the 144,000 who are part of the elect group, the chosen, the ekletos, they have to go through some tribulation. This is Luke 12:48. You can go back to watching Dr. Jeff and I talking about this. Luke 12:48 is all about it. It says that they will go through some tribulation, which means some level of martyrdom, but not the heavy amount of martyrdom. But they have to go through a tribulum to separate the wheat from the chaff. How cool is that, guys? This is a harvesting. Jesus is taking away the wheat, not the stalk. The stalk is the useless portion of it. So the earth is being harvested in that way. The last harvest of a season is called the grape harvest. And in the grape harvest, what has to occur is they take this little hoe, and it's called a sickle. So powerful, and I want you to read this with me, guys. Revelation 14:14. Very misunderstood sets of verses here, okay? Now, 14:1 is talking about the 144,000. It goes up to Revelation verse 4, approximately, right? And we just told you about Revelation 14:6, which was the angel that's bouncing around the world preaching the gospel, okay? Now, the culmination of that, this is all about the call, from Revelation 14:6 to Revelation 14, basically 16. Let's read those together for a second, okay? Then I looked, and there was a white cloud, one like the Son of Man seated on the cloud with a gold crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Okay, let's get what he is. This is Jesus, one, okay? The Son of Man, okay? It's something that we haven't seen. He's in the clouds. This is the glorious appearing. This is Rosh Hashanah, the coronation of the king. Now, when Jesus is first introduced in Revelation, or excuse me, 1 Thessalonians 4:16, he comes down, the angel comes down with a shout, and we meet the Lord in the air, and we're with them together. I mean, the dead in Christ will rise, and we meet him together in the air, and we will be with him together. And encourage one another with these words. This is what 1 Thess 4:16 talks about. But when we get to this portion, he goes, I've got a sickle. I've got a gold crown. How does a prince go and become a king? He gets married. Do you understand? Guys, Jesus gets married to you. You have fulfilled him. He's not only the Prince of Peace, he is the King of Kings, but he doesn't become the King of Kings in the point of time. Now, he's already been, okay? All the way through history, he's already been. But we have to have an initial point time frame. When Jesus dies on the planet, which is April 3rd, 33 AD, okay? We have to have a time frame of when he dies that actually happens on the planet. That's the first coming. His second coming is actually here. This is the real part, the visible coming. This happens in Philippians 4:11, I believe it is too. But this is him with the sharp sickle. Now let's get what gets confusing to people. Because verse 15 goes, another angel came out of heaven, crying out with a loud voice to the one who was seated on the cloud, use your sickle and reap. The time of the harvest has come. Harvest the earth, since the harvest of the earth is ripe. So this angel goes, okay, Jesus, do your thing. And so he's going to take the grapes. So verse 16, so the one who was seated in the clouds swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. This is the last tribulation, or excuse me, last rapture point, harpazo. Jesus takes the grapes out of it. Now we'll come back to that picture in just a second, okay? Revelation 14:17 says, then another angel, so we got a third one. It's like Jesus showing up, the messenger angel shows up and talks to Jesus, the third angel comes out and he does another job. And he goes, well, I also have a sharp sickle, came out of the sanctuary of heaven. And yet another angel, so now we got a fourth one, who came up with the authority with fire, came over the altar. He called it with a loud voice to the one with sickle, use a sharp sickle, and the earth is ripened. Then we get to verse 19. So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and gathered the grapes from the earth and threw them into the winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled over outside the city. The blood flowed up to the horses' bridles up to 180 miles. Now, if you don't slow down through that part, you miss whole portions of it. There's an angel. There's Jesus. There's another angel. And then there's another one that does a job. Jesus, now listen to me, guys. When we have grapes, there are two reasons for grapes. Now, there's a reason for barley and wheat. And they make a food, right? They are a harvest. They are the good thing that we want to come from. We don't want the chaff anymore, and we don't want the chaff that comes from the barley, right? We don't want the useless part of this. These are the people that, when you separate it, at this point in time, everyone in the world is separated. Only the bride of Christ goes. Because she's made herself ready, in essence, okay? She saw herself as the bride. Now, people from this point in time to here, to the middle section of it, will come to belief. And they're they have to go through a tribulum, a rubbing event to have that next situation, to have the wheat harvest, so that they are the guests at the wedding. That's their job. That's their purpose in life. Now, grapes, at the very end, grapes have to have a violent process to separate them from the world because they're so tied to the world. What did I say about preppers? They prep because they wanted to make it through life on the planet. And God goes, no, I'm going to cut you off. Now, there's two reasons for grapes. One is for a fruit. The second one is for wine. So when Jesus is the one that takes the grape fruit up to heaven, the good part of it, the rest of it is smashed down in the winepress of the wrath of the Lamb. When he's talking about the wrath of the Lamb, that means the end. This can only be at the end. That's why people see these verses and they go, and they get so argumentative. I'm telling you, there's 3 separate events, and it's not exclusive. You could go here. You could at least go here. You can at least go here. We're not going to be mad at people who didn't go at this different time frame. It just took more for them to come to real faith. Sorry. And it's not exclusive. And some people make, they have partial rapture theories and they make it exclusive. Well, you're not good enough. No, you can't do anything to make yourself better. You just come by belief. That's what Ruth did. She didn't make herself better. She wasn't the catch of the world because she's already previously married. She wasn't even a virgin at the point, right? Because she was previously married. Do you catch that, guys? This is how powerful this stuff is. So we see this kind of thing. So let me kind of pull it off the screen here. Sorry. Do you see the gorgeousness of the gospel? I mean, I know of a person who loves to teach on Revelation and says, we're in the middle of the tribulation. There's a bunch of people doing this. But most of those people will admit to you that they'll talk about we're in the book of Revelations. I've had pastors say, know that I teach on this stuff. I've been teaching my church about the book of Revelations. And I have to be careful because I'm not trying to beat them up, but I'm going, it's called the book of Revelation, singular. And a lot of people don't get that, right? I mean, they haven't spent enough time on it. You can't just go through it 3 times as it's one truther tries to tell you. And then on the 4th time, she went backward through it and she got it all down. Every single good prophecy teacher who teaches on the end issues has been through Revelation and frankly the whole Bible for all those verses hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. We can't even count the times that we've read through these same verses and we keep coming back to them. That's not really an expert. Dr. Jeff actually gave a story, and he might have said this to you, but I don't know if he said it to you. But here's what he said in the story. He goes, and as we end here, he goes like this. So this guy meets with him, has no idea that Jeff is an absolute expert in the word in ways that most people will never achieve. And so this guy's like, tell him all about end time issues. Oh, you got to watch this guy on YouTube. And you're going to tell me the same thing, right? You got to watch this guy on YouTube. He's got it all down. I'm not going to watch him. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm not going to watch him. Why? Because I'm going to be moved by the word. You want to talk to me about the word? Talk to me about the word. Happy to hear you. You could email me and talk to me about the word, but I'm not going to go and watch someone's video on that particular thing. I'm trying to do a video to tell you something you haven't really seen. And it's because it's all been in there. It's not because Scott's smarter than anyone else. It's just there. We need to have this revelation for this post-Nasara time frame so that we can preach the gospel in ways and open it up and go, guys, this gospel has not been corrupted. I just proved it in here. It has zombies inside the word when that zombie concept had never existed. Stop with the corruption conversation. Jesus made this perfect through the Holy Spirit. Hope that helped you out. We are going to hit the last three groups would be the goats, the sheep, and the remnant. We're going to hit those ones. We're going to do it individually. And the fourth one is the friends. Oh, it's so fun. You'll see that. You'll see when we do all that. Thanks so much. If you like it, like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Thanks so much.